our mobile platforms are our fastest growing news platforms in our industry, and I think that soon maybe many people will have their first and maybe only contact with us through their mobile devices. But the question is, of course, how to make money out of this kind of evolution, and it's a great honor to have Peter Conti with us today, who is the Vice President of Borrell Associates in the United States, which is a consulting and research firm. So let's give him a warm applause.
Thank you.
Warm welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the group having me here. By the way, my background, my mother is from Linköping, and I went to University of Lund, but that was a long time ago, and I haven't been in Stockholm for quite some time, but my cousins live here. In fact, one of them is visiting with me, and I'm not going to attempt to speak any Swedish, even though I could speak it at one time, but trust me, I can understand a lot of what you're saying, so be careful. Okay, I was going to talk about mobile ad revenue, and you know, a lot of these kinds of presentations always have a lot of pie charts, right? So I don't have any pie charts really with me today. So just in case you were hoping for a pie chart, if you like that kind of thing, I thought I'd bring along my favorite pie chart. This is the pie I've eaten and the pie I haven't eaten. And after lunch, it'll be even less pie. You can watch me eat my pie. So let me tell you a little bit about Borrell Associates first. We focus on local ad spending. That is, we track numbers, the ad spending numbers in online, in mobile, in print, and we do it by business categories. So we can look at what restaurants are spending in online advertising in any given market in the United States. And that's what we're known for, is our tracking of this local online ad spending. In fact, many times if you read something in the Wall Street Journal or some internet sites about online ad spending, it's often attributed to Borrell Associates. And a lot of companies buy this information from us, companies like Google, Yahoo, the major media companies like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and they use it to help make sales. We also do consulting. We work with a lot of media companies around the world. In fact, we have quite a few in England and in Canada that we work with. And we have research that we publish. We put out articles every month on trends in local internet advertising and local mobile advertising. And you can go to our website at BorrellAssociates.com and you can find more about that. And we actually put on a conference every year in New York. We have a conference, an annual conference, and it's on local online ad conference. And so we get about 500 people come to that conference. A little bit about mobile here. This is the growth of it in the last 10 years, the ad spend for mobile. And in the last 10, if you look at, I've plotted different media on this chart, and we see how fast the ad share has grown in the first 10 years of the medium. And what we see is the purple is mobile, the blue is broadcast TV, and then the green one is the internet, and then cable TV. And where that purple line starts really jumping up is around 2009, and we see just explosive growth. It looks like a hockey stick, the way it just jumps straight up there. And we expect that this is going to be, our forecast is that this is going to be the highest growth that we have yet to see, the quickest growth in any kind of media. And mobile advertising is really coming into its own apart from digital, or I should say online advertising. Now, blacksmiths were a common sight years ago, 100 years ago, right? They were on every street They were everywhere. But blacksmiths thought they would be around forever, because they thought, well, we're always going to need horseshoes. We're going to have to do something because we're always going to be riding horses. But that changed. And so as the evolution happened, the blacksmiths, they didn't go away completely, but in order to survive, those blacksmiths usually had to learn how to work on a car. So they had to develop mechanical skills. So the car didn't displace the horse completely, but it brought on a whole new industry that eventually was the demise of the blacksmith industry. Now, today, if you're relying on mechanical skills as a car mechanic, you're not going to make it, right? What do you need to know? You need to know how to use a computer to work on a car. This has displaced the old technology. This is a new form of business. So I want to talk a little bit about disruptive technologies. And what I mean by disruptive technologies are something that's an interruption of continuity. It's a new item in the evolution. And this is some work, this chart here is some work that we did with Harvard Business School a couple of years ago, where we looked at interesting case studies, and what we saw was that the established business, that big blue circle, that could be traditional print. But the disruptive business could be something like online. And what happens at first is online gets its own share of revenue outside of the established business. So it doesn't really disrupt at first the established business, but within a couple of years, what it begins to do, it starts nibbling away at the edges. And it takes just a sliver from the established business. And that's usually a period when the established businesses say that, or sink their feet in, or sink their heels in and say, no, we're losing a little bit of business, but we believe that this business is going to come back because we're the established business. There'll always be a business there. But what happens in time is that even the new disruptive business will become an established business also. Let's take a look at one of these case studies. When we look at Kodak, Kodak invented digital cameras back in 1975. So they had this huge camera with a tape, I guess, on the side of it. And they were the inventors of it. And around 1996, they brought it to market. And they weren't in a real rush to bring it to market. For one, they didn't want to focus on something that was not part of their core business. They also felt it had lower quality. Kodak also thought there was a low consumer interest. Oh, it's only a few technology geeks that are interested in it. Or it's only going to have applications for a few things. They didn't think about the implications. In fact, they tried to ignore those. And the other thing was, it had inferior margins. It wasn't as profitable as the regular film business was. And so they tried to ignore it. And it was competing with their core business. So typically, people would be sitting around at Kodak and discussing digital, and they were worried about it taking away resources from the established business. So what did they do? They finally felt under threat a couple of years later. And do you remember these things? I'm sure they were in Sweden also, the kiosks. So they came out with, under the threat of disruption, kiosks where you could bring your chip in and print your pictures out. They still thought that you were going to print your picture out, that was the future of the business. They wanted to save the film business. They didn't want to invent something new. They didn't understand that people wanted to share online. They may not want to print out. who prints out pictures anymore, right? Everybody, you send it through your phone. This is how I look at pictures now. Even on the iPad, I use the AirPlay to look at the pictures. You remember when you used to print them at home? Now that was difficult, right? Trying to print pictures at home. I never get the right kind of pictures. I know my dad, he's still trying to print pictures at home. He's 89 years old, and I get these pictures with half of it's just white paper, and then there's a little piece of a head at the top, you know. But he's transforming also at 89. I mean, he's now he sends me pictures from his phone. I get pictures of anything he eats for dinner. This is what you do when you're 89 years old. Here's a picture of my spaghetti. Thanks, Dad. But, you know, fortunately, he doesn't print out the pictures. So, under the threat of disruption, Kodak focused on core business. They dug their heels in again. They wanted to make sure they could better serve their existing customers and focus on currently controlled resources. They didn't want to develop a business that was going to disrupt the established business. They focused on kiosks for years. And finally, what happened? As this chart shows, by 2012, the beginning of 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. It's hard to imagine. This is a company that owned the film business around the world. More than 95% of all the film business was Kodak's. And right here is around the time they introduced the Easy Share camera. They started thinking about the way people were using digital photography in 2005. And so there they started talking about sharing the fun and sending it via email. So they had a little docking station that you would stick your camera on, and that would transfer the information. But it was too little, too late. They finally realized you want to focus on the job, not the product. And so what happened is, in the bankruptcy, came along in 2012, and you can see they introduced the Easy Share camera right here, and there was a little blip of activity, but again, it was way too late after coming off of all that. They just lost their share completely. They lost the mind, the ownership, they were not on top of everyone's mind. So let's think about mobile as being a lot different. Mobile is actionable content. Mobile delivery is an evolution. It's not an extension. It's not an extension of internet. It's not an extension of anything. It's its own new business. It's disruptive even to the internet. You use mobile entirely different ways, in entirely different ways than you use online. And so we have to think about that as a new business. For instance, here in this example, we see how it has evolved for shopping. Online, if you research for a car seat, you look up ratings and things like that. But if you go shopping for a baby's car seat, you can touch it, you can feel it, you take pictures of it. Look at how it's changed just in listening for research. You look up stuff for a workout, but with the cell or smartphone, you actually can look up a program. Pandora has an app for a workout. It's actionable. You're doing something. The same thing for cooking. Online is about information. Online is about finding a recipe, making a list, printing the coupons. But mobile is participation. You are shopping. You find recipes, you find the coupons, you have the coupons in your hand, you redeem the coupons. It's all about action. The same thing with fitness. Everything is researched online in advance. You plan for your workout. But with the cell phone, or a smartphone, I should say, mobile applications, it's participation. You start a workout, you get feedback, it measures results. And mobile advertisers are often new advertisers. They're not the same old advertisers. So think about who you're looking to advertise. You may be going after the print advertisers, online advertisers. What you want are participants, advertisers that have actionable content. And finally, when I talk about disruption, I just want to mention this here called the yes curve. And what we see is that the path of high performers, companies that do the best, they have an industry-leading business, but they realize that as that industry is peaking, they need to be developing another business because that business is going to turn. And it happens in every business. There is nothing, no business model or example that has not gone through this kind of disruption. And so you always need, and I see this as being online as a leading business line right now, but mobile is a separate business, and you need to be developing mobile at this time as a separate business line. So there's a lot of numbers about mobile revenue streams. We hear a lot of things about, oh, this and that's being spent on mobile, and it's so much that I just want to cut through some of that because things aren't always what they appear to be. Different kind of stream. But this is the local online, oh, thank you. Thanks. The local online advertising revenues, and this shows the explosive growth of online over the last 10 years in the United States at the local level. This is what local businesses are spending in their own markets on local advertising. This is not national advertising. This is just the local advertising. And it's grown to $16.4 billion. We expect that digital advertising is going to grow by 40% from 2012 to 2016. But when we look at this digital advertising, something else emerges that doesn't appear to be what it really is, and that is mobile. Most of these digital ad dollars are mobile advertising dollars. They're not just the phone, they're the tablets, they're laptops because they're portable. Advertising now is targeted, highly targeted for geographic. It knows who you are. So we expect in the next 5 years that more than 85% of digital advertising is going to be what we would call mobile advertising. And I found these statistics right before I came over just last week, and I thought that you might find this of some interest, that at least in the United States, news remains a top activity on tablets. Right after email, news apps. So placing advertising, and also a top activity on smartphones. Again, it's the biggest activity after email. And so using news apps, that is a great way to monetize your content. In the click-through rates, these are the numbers I just received from the same study. The click-through rates are enormous because the consumer is more engaged, right? It's actionable content. They're doing something at the time. If there's a relevant ad there, they're highly likely to click through. They're more likely to click through. So we have a 12% click-through ad rate for smartphones, 14% on tablets. And here's an example that one organization uses. They actually feed the news, or the advertisement, in the news feed. So what we see is there is some kind of event going on, and that typically gets a 5% click-through rate for this news company. But here is a newspaper that they've developed some different apps, and they have high click-through rates. It's relevant content, it's placed in the right place at the right time. And so we should be heartened or happy to see there's such high click-through rates on the mobile devices, because this is the kind of information that advertisers are looking for. This is what advertisers want to see. And we've had these low click-through rates for so long. So this is a big change when it comes to that. Now I want to talk about digital sales teams, because I think that just to get started, you have to think about the structure of your organization if you're going to sell digital advertising. And so at Borrell, we embarked on a few studies to really see what was going on in the structure of a digital sales team. So we did a survey, and we surveyed TV stations and we surveyed newspapers. We had about 400 companies participate in our survey. And we asked them about the structure of the sales teams. And we asked them, were they hiring and things like that. And one of the things, I thought I'd show a little cartoon about sales teams. This is too often the case that, they're busy getting rid of sales teams when you should be growing your sales team. So the dip in sales actually coincides here with the elimination of the sales people. So we asked these survey questions. We asked people, do you have at least one dedicated digital account executive, one person on your sales team that exclusively sells mobile or online advertising? That's all they do. They are not part of the traditional, they don't make traditional print sales, they don't make traditional media, TV sales. And so some of the results we got, we asked them about a consultative sales approach. And the question was, how well does your sales team perform with a consultative sales approach to help the advertiser understand how to use media? And the difference was just astonishing. If there was a dedicated account executive on the staff, you had this 85% who said good or better. We asked the question about how well do they understand digital products. So, again, astonishing difference. Only 38% were good to outstanding if they did not have a dedicated account executive. What happens is you get a dedicated account executive in the team, and it brings the whole level up. It also shows a commitment from the top down, because management believes in it enough to bring in a dedicated account executive, someone who understands just digital and who can be a mentor for the rest of the group, for the traditional account executives. And the motivation to sell. If you want to motivate your sales team to sell digital products, you need to have someone who's a dedicated account executive. In fact, this made such a difference that we looked at the revenue, and the revenue was astonishing. On a per-person basis, it was just a huge difference. And then when we asked also about understanding the marketing trends, we see that they were better able to understand overall marketing trends. And they could do a better job with their with their advertisers. And what this translates into is hard dollars, hard ad spending revenue. The difference was almost 3 times the amount. And this was per person on the sales team. So overall, we found that the sales team averaged about $70,000 per salesperson in terms of yearly income, in terms of yearly revenue. But it went to over $200,000 per person if you had a dedicated account executive. So it makes a big difference to have someone who just understands that. And one of the things is that these people also, when they're dedicated account executive, digital, they're not worried about the traditional side. They're not worried about saving the established business. They're trying to sell the new business. Just like in the examples of the disruptive technology. So this doesn't even get into the discussion of should you have separate teams or just separate divisions. Just having someone who understands digital and is devoted to and is held accountable for digital makes a huge difference. So now I'll show you some mobile ad campaigns. One of the things that we've found is that since it is actionable, that promotions are the best way to drive more interaction with the users. Any kinds of promotions, contests, deals, things like that will work extremely well. Here's one example here of a contest to drive opt-ins. That was to get opt-in cell phone numbers. And it was just a prize of a high-end TV. They promoted it with online and with print. Still, the best way to drive traffic for a promotion is to use your traditional media. That's how people find out about the promotion. If you just do the promotion online, or if you just do the promotion on the phone itself, you're never going to get the kind of numbers that are going to be impressive to the advertiser and not going to do the advertiser any good. What you need is to use the traditional media, blend it in the mix, drive traffic. So in this location where they ran this contest, they had an 85% opt-in rate. So the advertiser was able to get almost 2,000 new cell phone numbers. Now here's a campaign for Dunkin' Donuts. Users were invited to submit a photo of themselves enjoying a Dunkin' Donut beverage. So, they would be drinking something and people were taking shots and pictures and submitting them. And they post them on their Facebook page, Dunkin' Donut. And then people can take a look at them, and they can vote on them and different things, and prizes were included. Highly successful campaign for them. And this was in Providence, Rhode Island. And then they even put a billboard. And they had $6,500 in revenue they had 109 photo submissions. And this was just a small market station. Now, some of these examples I'm using are from TV stations, how they're using mobile, because I think that they have some interesting, they think more in terms of promotions, television. Television and radio stations are all about promotions. And they do a really good job with promotions, so I think these are good examples to see. Here's a hurricane tracker app. I don't think you have to worry about that here, am I correct? No, so that's not going to go over real big, but you can come up with an ice app or something, right? The ice tracking app, I don't know. But anything weather related, at least in the United States, has huge potential, huge draw. Over 4 million page views with that tracker app. And we see the visits, and what they did was they sold exclusive sponsorships. They had TV promotion also, so this drove traffic to it. Again, it was using the traditional media. And they developed text databases, tie-ins with all the mobile apps and the daily deals, etc. And here's one with sports and sports applications. Sports apps are big with team schedules. I mean, you could do it in your locations for the local sports, and just have a sports app and put in relevant advertising. And a typical promotion like this in the United States, I mean, they're selling sponsorships for $3,500 to $15,000 US dollars a month for these kinds of things. In fact, what I'm hearing from a lot of our clients is that they cannot monetize the mobile stuff fast enough. The demand is so great for mobile advertising that they don't have enough products. They've raised the prices, and in some cases, advertisers are waiting 6 months to advertise just with local newspapers on their apps. And sponsorships are good, but the click-through rates now and the page views and impressions have gone up so high over the last couple of years that the papers are finding that they need to start charging on an impression basis now. They were trying to get away from that for a while and just do the sponsorships. So there's a change there, and they're underselling in many cases. Here's one with the mobile pre-roll sponsorships. And they were selling display packages also. But again, I'm hearing from the TV stations and from the newspapers that by selling the sponsorships, they're finding that their traffic often exceeds what they anticipated. So it's a balancing act there, but page impressions or user impressions may be the way to go in the future. And here was another one where there was just these pre-rolls, the little videos in front of the news story, and that's one way that they monetize it. And here's a local campaign by a restaurant chain. 15 restaurants banded together in one market. And so the local radio station put together a campaign for them, and they added in email, they had their own text database also. But in 2 weeks, in just a small market, I mean, this was a very small market, and they got over 1,000 text opt-ins. And here's one from a real small town also. This case study. You could win a pizza for a year. They were appealing to a young demographic. They were trying to go after 18 to 25-year-olds. Everybody loves pizza, right? Win a free pizza for a year. Well, you text keywords, win pizza, to a short code. The objective was to build a database using television to drive traffic, so they promoted it on TV. They had more than 12,000 people. Now, this was in a town of about 60,000 people. So they got 12,000 people that entered. More than 3,000 during the commercials alone. And what was real interesting is that 9,000 came from friend forwarding. So particularly in that age bracket, it was just perfect kind of advertising or promotion. So again, promotions really drive, drive this kind of opt-in basis. So just to recap, I want to talk about a few of these things one more time, recommendations. Disruptive rules. Think different. The case studies, the research, it's all there. It shows that the new business will eventually disrupt the established business. And mobile is a new business. It is different from online. People use it in an entirely different way, just like online is so different than print. You need actionable content. When people are using mobile, they're on the go. They're on the move. They're doing something. You have to give them content that makes sense for when they're on the move. Dedicated digital sales staff, even if it's just one person. And you want to leverage promotions. Promotions are so important to driving traffic. And finally, when I talk about like dedicated digital sales staff and then I talk about disruptive technology, we have to think of new ways, again, of looking at these new product lines. And so I just want to leave you with what I call the 30-30 rule. And that is, if you have a meeting on mobile or on online or on whatever the next new technology is going to be, at least 30% of the people in the room need to be under the age of 30. Because those are the people that are not going to be tied to the old legacy, to the established business. You don't have a 25-year-old in the room in a meeting trying to save the fax machine. Right? They don't know what the fax machine is. And so that's why it's so important for that. And now I'll take questions.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. Do we have any questions out there in the audience? I think we do, but maybe...
No, it's lunchtime. I'm standing
so,
between them and lunchtime.
Yeah.
This is like trying to ask questions when it's like, right, if I do a presentation right before cocktail hour. Nobody asks a question.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, we have one more.
Hey?
Okay. Hi,
I
I'm
can see
Jens
it.
from... Hi. I'm Jens from Finland. I could talk with you Finnish also. Is that okay for you? If I speak Finnish, is that
Finish?
okay?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right. It was very interesting presentation. I would like to ask you something about... you told us that you estimate the development for mobile is going to grow about 40% in the next coming 4 years. And the most part of it would be mobile. My question is, how does this growth, does it include in some way local search functions, or do you believe in them in any way?
Yeah, search is in there. When we look at digital advertising, like online advertising and mobile advertising, we do include search. One of the things that we see in terms of paid search, we actually believe that over the next 5 years, paid search is going to decrease a little bit. And a lot of that is because the pricing is going down on the search. But on the mobile side, the search, is most of it is geared towards, I would say, location-based advertising more than search, because the phone recognizes where you are. And so there's less search advertising. But we do see, for mobile advertising, search is going to increase. So there's just competing forces there, and search is kind of at a steady pace over the next 5 years, paid search.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Okay, well, I have one, and I was thinking when I heard your presentation, you know, that we've been struggling in the last 10 years to capitalize on our websites, and still a lot of development going on there, and a lot of things that are not functioning as we maybe want them to. Mm-hmm. And the mobile evolution is just like taking us like this. What can we learn from the United States in order to kind of jump that train?
Well, I think that we have found there are a few things, and we have put together, actually at our website now, I think you can get information on benchmarking for media sites. And one of the things that we have found is that almost all these companies have at least a dedicated account executives, the highly successful ones. But in addition to that, they have to have enough of them. Because if you just anticipate that, for example, we have newspapers that come to us and they say, oh, we want to do $2 million next year in online advertising or in digital advertising. We say, how many dedicated account executives do you have? They say, well, we have one. Well, there's no way that one can do $2 million worth of business. They're not going to get there. The average we figured was about one account executive is good for maybe $200,000 to $300,000 in US dollars worth of ad business. So if you want to do $2 million, you need to hire 10 account executives in order to reach that number. So you have to be realistic about it, and that's one of the things that we have found, that they just don't hire enough dedicated account executives.
Another question is, right now many people are focusing, our companies were focusing on print, and we have web and some of TV. Mobile is still like something lingering, mm-hmm. Yeah? And I wonder, is your advice to just go home and rethink that priority?
In the next 5 years, the mobile dollars, just like those red bars mm-hmm. showed, that mobile dollars, first off, you want to think beyond this. This is not the only thing that's mobile. You have the iPads, which account for a huge amount of traffic. Your tablets account for a huge amount of traffic. But also, you have laptops are portable and other devices. You get advertising in GPSs now. I mean, I have a GPS that has, in my car, that actually gives advertising. So if I'm going past a Subway shop, if I turn it on, it'll give me an ad for the local Subway shop, or come in and get $1 off, that kind of thing, which is probably kind of dangerous also, right, to have stuff like that popping up on it. But that you have to think about the fact that in 5 years, this is a new kind of business. It requires different content. It's a lot different than online. And so you need to start, and also that hockey stick that I showed with the tremendous growth over the next 5 years, in order to capture that. Otherwise, you have what I call the pure plays, and those are the businesses that are just dedicated to mobile or just dedicated to online or digital advertising. They're the ones that are going to come in and try and capture the market, because there's a pent-up demand for it by the advertisers. I mean, we did separate surveys where we asked small and medium-sized businesses throughout the U.S. if they were considering mobile advertising or if they had already used mobile advertising. More than 50% of the people who weren't using mobile advertising said they were considering some kind of advertising, but less than 23% said that they had been approached by a newspaper or a TV station with mobile ads. So there's a huge discrepancy there. And that's why you have to develop that business now, because people are looking for it.
Just one more short question. You were talking about these responsible for the digital mobile market. Do these people have to be like, we talk about digital natives, mobile natives, I mean people who really live their lives through their smartphone.
Yeah.
You see my question?
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. You know, I have case study after case study of companies that have tried different things, and a lot of them have had success with radio salespeople, because they're more promotion oriented. They're quicker to react to things. But I think you need that kind of thing. It's kind of like the 30-30 rule, right? 30% of your sales force better be under the age of 30 if they're selling digital. It's just because their mindset and their way of thinking.
And that's one really concrete thing to go home and work with. Okay, thank you so much, Peter, for being with us.
Thank you.
Warm hand.
Thank you.